First, thank you for taking your time to attend this session today. And I'm going to go through a few slides. There's an old saying, a picture tells 1,000 words. So we want to get right to the platform and demonstrate it. It'll be much more meaningful that way. And so once again, the slide deck we will send with the follow-up email. And with that, both Suman and Ben will take a lead on the demo portion in about 3 or 4 minutes after I'm through with my slides. So let me first talk about KRISE. We are the original low code platform for JD Edwards. We started in 2003, so we're approaching our 20th anniversary. We have many, many large companies like the bullet item on the very bottom of this slide. And we do projects across the horizon. In fact, this is touching on just some of our JDE active accounts. We work with over 100 JDE companies on business process improvement and automation projects, portals. We do work across the business horizon. So Ben's going to be doing a demo today on the platform, and we're very, very much set up like JDE. Everything JDE apps is based on JDE tools, and the current version of tools with Orchestrator and all the great new functionality built in. It does parallel us. Everything we do with our pre-built apps or our custom apps, it's all built on our platform. And ours is a low-code platform, as indicated in this slide with that canvas, Visio-like canvas drag and drop that you're seeing in the image there. And we have all the credentials. And I mentioned we're the original, so our unique value proposition is the tight integration to JD Edwards. It's OVI certified, both 32 and 64-bit. We have a payments component dealing with sales orders, invoices, work orders that many, many companies use. Obviously, you have to be compliant with PCI in regards to those projects. And we're CPA certified, SOC 2 Type 2. And this slide right here just reinforces these are Oracle slides. These are slides and comments from the upper management at JD Edwards, Denver, and they talk about where we fit in the business horizon tied to Orchestrator and JD Edwards. And people like the idea of not modifying JD Edwards, but using a platform like us, as noted in the bottom right. This is our platform. This is what Ben and Suman will be reviewing. On the top is the, think of that as the presentation layer, be it mobile or a browser of any sort. We support them all. Or it could be integration tied to REST and SOAP or batch jobs. We do support headless, obviously. With that, we'll get into the details. What you see, the EASYProcess portion, that's what Ben's going to be reviewing. Our unique value proposition is working with Orchestrator and business functions and the data dictionary, UDCs, as far as, say, pointing to a data source for values on a select. And that's what Ben's going to be showing too. And here's just another overview of our platform. With our platform, we are based on AWS cloud. We're cloud native, and we do have SaaS pricing that encompasses all aspects of cost. And when I talk about that, I'm talking about the software license, the SaaS software licensing, the necessary support components, the AWS infrastructure, and obviously the services tied to the projects, be it custom or pre-built that you want to do. So with that, I'm going to stop my sharing. And Ben and Suman, you can take it over from here.
Okay. Let's share my screen. Okay. Yeah. So what I'm going to be going over today is kind of a demo of the development environment, including some development pieces, DevOps, security, diagnostics, and then I'm going to be going into other parts of development, such as the architecture that we're working on, and some resources. So the page that I'm on right now is the applications page for the IDE. And as you can see, I'm in Google Chrome right now. Our IDE is 100% web-based. And this page kind of showcases all of the applications that I have access to currently. So you see we have a vendor app, a customer app, inventory transfer, and so on. Up at the top here, we have kind of the upgrade information and the version that we're on. We're always making upgrades to kind of make our platform a little better. And here's how you get information on that. So I'll scroll down here and I'm going to go into this demo IDE app. And once I do that, we'll be inside of that application's IDE. So there's a lot of different menus here. I'm going to go over a few of them, including this development piece here. This is what I'll start with. And I'll start with this web pages, widgets, templates page. And this will show all of the web pages that are in our application. I'm going to take this customer's inquiry and I'm going to click edit. And this will take us into the UI canvas for this page. So as Doug mentioned, this is all kind of a drag and drop canvas here. We have, the page in the center. We have the controls on the left, like a button, checkbox, drop down, so on, that we can just kind of drag and drop. It's all MVC. It's all an MVC design concept, model view controller, which essentially means that there is a model that we're getting our information from, in this case, a list of customers from JDE, and we're displaying that on the view, which is the centerpiece, and things like the search button, the paging options, all of these are controllers because they're making changes on the screen here. So what I want to show is just a small change using this UI canvas. So what I want to do is, let me show you what this looks like currently. So I'll click on desktop view. This is what this page looks like currently. So there's some paging options. It's displaying all of the customers' information from JDE. There's filtering at the top. And if I go to phone view, same thing, but it automatically formats it to a card format, so it's easier to read on mobile. We still have the same paging and filtering options as well. So the change that I want to make is I want to add a country column to the list because it's not displaying that yet. So I'm going to go inside the model, and the model uses what we call a logic canvas. And so a logic canvas is used anywhere in your application that needs logic. So every logic canvas has a start and terminate node, and everything in between gets executed. Over to the left is the list of services that you can drag and drop onto this canvas. So we have, for instance, database services. You can do an inquire, an insert, delete. We have email services, send and receive emails. And in this case, there's just this sub method here. And if I go inside of the sub method, it opens up another canvas, which is where we're getting the customer information from JDE. And this customer's inquire here is what's actually going to JDE and back. So I want to add the country result to this inquire. So when you open up a service, there's a list of parameters that you have to fill out, like connection instance, where you're trying to connect to JD Edwards, table name, where clause in a query is all drag and drop as well. But what we want to do here is just simply add a result to the result list. We're going to highlight column here. Over to the left, we can expand all of the columns in the table, which the IDE is actually pulling this from the data dictionary. And we're just going to search for country. And we can double click. It pulls it into our results. And that's all we need to do for the inquire. So I'll go back to our page here. And we wanted to add that new column. So I'm going to expand this list to one column long. And then over to the left, we have our model. So I'm just going to expand our customers inquiry, and this will load all of the columns from that query. And you can see our new ALCTR, or country column. So if I drag that over to our list, click create, it puts that right there. So if I go to desktop view and the page reloads, you'll see that country column over here. So that's kind of a way to do an easy change using the UI canvas and manipulating the model a little bit. And so that is the web pages. Also under the development category is workflows. So I'll click on workflows. We have one workflow in this application, a PO change flow. So I'll click on edit, and this takes us into the third kind of canvas, which is the workflow canvas. It's very similar to a logic canvas, has that start and terminate node, but in between are workflow statuses that requests can sit at. So this one, this workflow, just to give you a quick overview, it's for a PO change request. So a supplier submits a PO change request. It gets at this created status, and this change request can either be approved by the supplier directly, or it requires some planner approval. And if it requires planner approval, they can either approve, reject, or cancel it, to which the request eventually gets terminated. At each of these statuses are 4 icons. There is an arrival event, a complete event. So this is logic. The arrival event is logic that executes when a request reaches the status. And then a complete event is when the request leaves the status. And then we have actions and conditions. And so this will pull up a window where we can define the actions that a user can perform on the status. So we want them to be able to approve, cancel, or reject. And then conditions are these lines coming out of the status. So approve, cancel, and reject for those as well. And then the last icon here on a status is the actors. So these are the users that can act on requests at these statuses. So we can assign that to the original requester. We can assign it to a specific user, a role or group in the application, or a user property. Like, let's say everyone with this address number can approve these PO change requests, then we would do that here. And the last part to the workflow canvas is this properties menu over to the right here. And some properties I want to go over is the run mode can either be manual or auto. If I change it to auto, it changes that status to a dark blue. And this means that requests will be processed at this status on a batch instead of requiring some user intervention there. We also have escalation. So we can enable escalation and then define some escalation time that's required before it gets escalated. And then we can also define expected completion time as well. And so that's a good way to kind of manage your workflow statuses and make sure everything's going smoothly there. All right, and so that is the workflow portion of development. The next one that I want to show is batch jobs. So this IDE page displays all of the batch jobs in the application, and their runtimes, their status, what schedule they're running at. And if I go down to the ship confirm batch job, I can also view the history. And in this history pop-up, we can see, some batch job logs. You can see how the batch job's doing from here, how long it took, the start and end time. So that's all available, and it's a very easy interface to use here. Another piece of development is REST APIs. And here is the list of APIs that are in use by the application. These are just regular REST APIs. You can call these from within the application or outside of the application. However you need these set up, we can do that. So I'll go to the logic for one of these. And these are just defined in the logic canvas, like any other logic in the application. So you can see this one kind of takes in an input. This one has to do with updating user devices, but then it passes back some output. And you define this logic just like any other logic in the application. There's also the option to test the API. And this way we could pass in some input, and then we can see what the output would be for that API. It also gives you a URL that you can use to test as well. All right, and that's all I wanted to talk about for the development piece. Now I'll move on to DevOps, which is underneath this project management menu. And I'll go to our task list. And here lists all of the tasks in the application. So we have the task name, who submitted that task, who it's assigned to, if it's a bug or feature. The status can either be in progress or testing. It can be any other number of statuses based on if it's in DV, QA, PD. But if I open up, let's say 387, then we can get a more detailed view of this task. So we have a description. We can leave some comments here. We can update that status. Down at the bottom here, we support file uploads for the status. So that's here as well. But the idea for tasks is that you will create a task. A developer will get notified that that task was created and assigned to them. And then they'll log into the portal, into the IDE, and go to this developer workbench here. And here's where they can view all of their projects that are currently in development. So if we go to this first project here, which is already in progress, we can see all of my checkout objects. So we have a batch job, we have a workflow method, web page. We can see other users' checkout objects as well. These are all assigned to other users down here. Up at the top, we can see the path history. So this project did go to QA at one point, but then it went back to DV. It was demoted. And on these statuses, we can see timestamps. So I want to go to this last project here, and just to give you an example of what promotion looks like. This is the customer's inquiry that we just edited. And this was assigned to a task to add that country. And so I can switch the status to in progress, and then, I can switch the status to ready for testing. And then I can click on promote, and this will bring it from DV to QA. So I just click on promote. And then this will promote those sources to the next environment. And so it'd be ready for testing in this case. And so that's how promotion works. And if I look at that task now, we'll see that the status is testing. All right, and the last part of DevOps that I want to show is the project status. And this just shows a history of all of the projects that existed for this application, their names, description, and we can also see the path history for them as well. And if I click on that project, I can also see what objects were involved and some more details on that. All right, and that is pretty much it for DevOps. I'll move over to security, this menu up here, and I want to talk about a couple things here, including identity providers. So if I click into here, we'll see the setup for a SAML. So EASYProcess integrates with any SAML-based provider, be it Okta, Azure, Google. I'm actually signed into the IDE using my Google account, using a single sign-on, because you can set this up at the IDE level. You can set it up at the application level. Any service that provides this SAML integration, we can integrate with. You can just set it up right there. The other part of security that I wanted to bring up was roles. So if I go to this page, we'll see there are 3 roles defined. So this is a way that you can break down which users can see what in your application. So we have, for instance, a full access, an intermediate access, and internal. And if we go over to the object lists that these roles have access to, we can see, this the user with this role would have access to, these 3 pages. So you can restrict it that way. And so there's a lot of other things you can do with security, but I'll leave it at that for now since we only have a limited amount of time. But the next thing that I wanted to talk about was the diagnostics category here. And the first of which is the application logs. So your application will produce logs for any batch job runs, any REST API calls, or any action by a user on a page. So it'll all be recorded here, and they're very, very detailed logs. They kind of give you information on buttons that were clicked on, and it gives you this XML view of start time, end time, duration. It gives you everything here. So if I were to look at the customers list, we could see that customer query that we called is right here. The results from that query are right there. We can see the query that it ran. So they're very detailed logs for the application that you can view. The other thing in diagnostics is alarms. And this is a way that if you add an alarm here, you can add an alarm to different types of objects, be it batch jobs, database connections, ECC, which I'll go over that later. But this will essentially notify different users, depending on the duration that you select and the number of notifications. It'll notify the users if any of these services go down. And you have a list of subscribers here. You can assign different users to these alarms, and they'll get the notification. Okay, so that's the diagnostics category. The next thing I wanted to show was this icon in the upper right here. This is what we call the gallery. And essentially, this is just a catalog of applications and application parts, different objects, or documentation that EasyProcess developers have uploaded to the gallery. And other developers can go into the gallery, and let's say they want to make a line chart in their application. They can click on info here. They can get some information on how that was created, and they can click install at the bottom if they want to install their application. So this is a good way to kind of get a head start on whatever you're working on. If it already exists, you might as well install it from the gallery to kind of get that head start and get that out quicker. So the next thing I want to show is actually on our website. And Doug already touched on this, but this is the architecture for from your integrated system all the way to the deployment options, the web app, the mobile app, REST API, batch job, and how there's platform DevOps in between, which I showed. And there's also a network diagram here that explains how ECC, the application that I was talking about earlier, integrates with your system, and this kind of allows your system to communicate with EasyProcess, which is hosted on AWS. So if you want to take a closer look at these diagrams, they're on our website underneath that technical category in architecture. But I mentioned ECC a couple of times. I wanted to bring this up as well. This is documentation on what ECC is. Essentially, it's just a small application that runs on-prem and has some connectivity to your instance of JDE or whatever ERP you want to connect to, or database outside of the application database that you want EasyProcess to have some access to. And it communicates through WebSockets to, we make a request from EasyProcess, and ECC will process that request and send it back to us, and that since we're hosted in AWS here. And so this document will be available to you as well. And since we're talking about JDE integrations, I can go back to our demo IDE. And under this JD Edwards category here, we have a couple of options. One is UDC. So let's say we want to use country codes, the country codes UDC in a dropdown on our website. We can do that pretty easily here. We can cache the UDC and then use this value, or use these values in that dropdown there. And this is an easy way to do that. You can refresh the cache using our JDE batch jobs. And same thing with the data dictionary entries as well. You can see we have some currency options here. So these will automatically be refreshed after a certain amount of time, but you can use them within the application. And next, I wanted to show a couple of just quick implementations that we have with not only JDE, but other ERPs. For instance, this Salesforce example. And I won't go too in depth with these. I'll just kind of show off the logic canvas and what these look like. But this Salesforce example essentially gets some user information and then calls a Salesforce API using a built-in request service that we have. And then, from that response in the API, we can generate some iframe and then display that iframe on an EASYProcess page in your application. There's also an example of EBS. And so this one is also fairly simple. This one's creating an order in EBS. So there's some variables that we're passing in from the application, and we want to pass that through EBS. And this is kind of what that looks like. So we're kind of passing some order information and dynamically. And that's what that looks like. And then lastly, I just wanted to show some business function integration to JDE as well. And this one is a bit more involved. We're getting some PO details and converting some dates, but eventually we're updating that PO in using a business function XML call object. And if you're familiar with that, it's essentially just filling in some parameters. Some of them dynamic coming from the application here.
And Ben, you might want to explain, I think you're going to go into it, that Orchestrator for people on 9.2, we do a lot of orchestration integrations, but people not on 9.2, that's where we refer back to good old interoperability in the XML call object that you're talking about. Or even if you're on 9.2 and you feel business function as part of the integration schema might work, just as well or better, that's an option.
Yep. So I didn't have an example lined up, but we can also use that same REST API service that we used for the Salesforce example to call orchestration, since essentially they're just REST APIs. So that's very possible as well. So the last thing that I wanted to go over is just some resources that are available as a developer. So up in the header here, we have this help tab. And this will direct you to the reference manual, which has documentation on any part of development or any part of the IDE. For instance, this batch job just kind of gives you in-depth explanations of everything on the batch job page. Another thing that you can use is training. We have video training that will take you through kind of the basics of our platform and how to use it. It goes all the way from an overview, the setup of an application to actually creating applications like a Hello World application or a CRM application. It's all video based, so you can just kind of go through these. And another resource that you would have is the forum. So we have a KRES forum. Here we post product announcements for new releases, and we also have a general forum which you can post any sort of, if you need some help, you can post here. And we have an internal team that checks this forum quite often, and other developers check this forum, so you can get help here. For those, or if you have any bug or feature requests, you can post them here as well. Just to give you an example of some interactions we had. Here's just one forum post. They needed some help, and they just posted some pictures back and forth, and the internal team kind of went in and helped. And so that's always a resource available. And the last resource is just this icon that's always in the lower right in the IDE. It's a live chat, so you can just put your name, your email, and your question, and then it'll start a chat, and you can just immediately get in touch with someone. There's a lot more that you can do with the IDE that I didn't go over, but that's kind of a good overview of most of our features there. But yeah, that's about it.
Ben, you did an excellent job. Suman, did you want to manage any of the Q&A portion at this point?
Yes, I have a few questions, so it's a good time to go through that. I have one question which is asking for from the gallery. Can we view the the inside of an object before installing? Actually, you cannot. You have to see the documentation of the object, but you have to install the gallery object to see actually inside of it. But one thing I will say is that for that we have a dedicated app called Lab. Every user has a dedicated app, and that Lab app is where you do this kind of installation. So it kind of gives you a safe environment to play with objects that you are not the author of before you actually bring it to any existing app. Other question I have is, do we support native app? Ben did show that how we render into a native app using the phone view. But at the same time, we also have dedicated native app, which you can download from App Store. It's called EasyProcess, both in Google Play and Apple Store. We also support, if you want to have your own branded apps using us, you of course will have to share your your Apple credentials and Google Play credentials with us. Another question I have is, how do we connect to JDE? And of course, Ben handled that already. How it's done through ECC. So it's a server software that runs on-prem. We fully support it, and it's very easy to install. It also allows you to keep all of your sensitive information like password and environment and user ID away from us. You don't have to share that in the cloud. And we also make sure that when you use the platform, you can use it in one of those. We have around 10 across the world geographically placed, platforms. So if you are, let's say, on the United States West Coast, you can use our platform on the West Coast to reduce the latency. And the final question is, do we support scanning? The answer of that will be yes, again, through our native apps, which can run on iPad. Our customers have implemented iPad-based smart scan solutions as if you are using a barcode scanner. Doug, that would be all.
Okay, perfect. And I do want to thank everybody. What we're doing with these webinars is we're doing business, a functional application-focused webinars once a month, and then the second webinar in the month, actually 2 weeks after, we're doing these technical. And today we decided to do a 30-minute. People, the value of your time is very, very important. We have a lot of detail. Please contact us if you have specific requirements or projects that you want to consider, or you want to test out the community edition of EasyProcess with the training that Ben reviewed. Please contact us. I just want to once again thank anything. Suman, do you have any other final thoughts before we?
No, we're good.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. You'll see a follow-up email with recording and other information coming from KRISE. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.